This next one's on Valentinus. He was a Eastern Roman general from the 7th century. He was of Armenian descent. Some sources first started him out as being a bodyguard of the Sacularios. I don't believe this to be true. I think he did start off, as other sources state, as an officer in the Sacularios. He was from a royal Armenian line of the Arsad family. Also, too, he, being this adjutant officer, helped him get promoted to a position of MVM or TM, Strategos of the Asia Minor Army in the Anatolic theme. Now, this position was given to him directly from the Emperor Constantine III, who he was part of his close inner circle, especially toward the end of his life. We see Valentinus being really close to the Emperor. So we have sources from the Patriarch Nicephorus and Sebasios that it was rumors were spread by Valentinus that Martina, the wife of Constantine III, the emperor, after his death, she was directly resulted in his poisoning, but it was not exactly proven. It was just a theory. So she can put her son Herculeonis onto the throne on Constantine's death. So we have Constantine giving money before his death to Valentine to spread out and retain the loyalty of the army in the East, which he does. He pays the soldiers of the East their wages. We do know that this Herculanus, Martina's son, comes from the Herculean line of an Armenian background, which could make sense why Valentinus was being trusted in keeping Constantine's bloodline intact. I understand Constantine's concern for his children and worrying about Martina usurping the power, but logic says that she was on borrowed time anyways, because she wanted her son to be a co-emperor, but Constantine wanted his two children to be exceeding past Hercules as the next emperor. So his son Constans would take the throne after the death of Constantine III. So what this results in is Herculean is going to go ahead and try to usurp the throne from his half-brother Constans. So Valentinus moves and decides to dispatch the same army that he paid off in the east to various provinces about securing the loyalty of the rise up against Martina and her son. He dispatches an agent to Rhodes, where an expeditionary force was assembled ready to leave to help relieve also Egypt from an Arab invasion, as well as come towards the capital. He was instrumental in getting his force without delay. Strategos also suggests, with the intel from Rhodes, believes Valentinus with his army began to march against the capital in early September 641. We have Valentinus with his army at Chalcedon, which is close to the capital, opening rebelling against Martina sometime in late September 641. Now, this made Martina worried. She realized that the army of Thrace was needing to come back, so she recalls the Thracian army to head to Constantinople to help stop this rebellion by Valentinus. Hercules II tries to persuade the Senate and people that Valentinus was abandoning his posts and pulling an army outside of Constantinople and trying to take the throne for himself. So what this results in is Hercules II, who's now like 15 years of age, sails to Chalcedon to meet with Valentinus directly and address the issues of his intentions with the army. He tries to make an oath with Valentinus, swearing that Constantine's children will not have any harm and that they will be co-emperors with him if he agrees to stop the rebellion and go against back to the east to protect the empire's interests against the Arabs who are now raiding into the east. So we have Valentinus agreeing to the terms set up by Hercules II. But at this point, we do see that the Patriarch Pyrrhus was able to calm the masses, and he decides to go ahead and flee to Carthage on September 29, 641. So we have the new patriarch as Paul being elected on October 15, 641. This made Hercules II try to appease the masses and coordinate Constantine's son, Constantine II, as co-emperor at the point, and then appoint Valentinus as Comos Exuperium, counter the Exuberators, one of the most important ranks in the Eastern Roman Empire at this time. So the troops of Valentinus were rewarded by financial gifts, and Martina swears under oath that she would not seek back the monies given earlier to them. So this is appeasing now the army of the East. This is appeasing the mass from opening rebellion because of Constantine II was not going to be a co-emperor, but Hercules bent that and was able to allow Constantine now to become co-emperor, so that appeased the mass from open rebellion in the capital. Valentinus then marches back to the east and campaigns against the Arabs. Now, historian Brooks states that Valentinus advanced to Cappadocia or Cilicia to operate against the Arabs. Strauss believes Valentinus went to Cilicia to stop Arabs under Ibn Qas, who had been a terrible threat to the Eastern Romans, who had penetrated deep into that province seeking a raza. In other words, a payment. Sibos wrote Valentinus with his army advanced on Constantinople, removed Martin Hercules, and placed Constans on the throne. So then he does come back after all this problems with the Arabs and removes Martina, which he exiles in Hercules II, and places Constans on the throne, then marches east to face the Arabs again. Valentinus marches east once after the coronation of Constantine's son Constans. So we still have this problem with going on with Egypt. The Arabs are taking it over. Now, some historians like Strauss and Watt are saying that they doubt that any relief attempt was made to assist Egypt, even though Cyrus was already making negotiations with the emir for its surrender. So I agree with that. There shows no documented proof that Valentinus was going to send any kind of forces over to relieve Egypt because it was already lost. So going back to the capital, Sibos writes that when this was all going down, with being Martina and Hercules II being removed, placing Constans on the throne, there was a wall and inscription on a wall stating that the riots broke out in Constantinople, instigated by the Blue faction, which consisted of the aristocracy and the wealthy merchant class. They were the ones that were supported by Constantine III. And also the description also reads that the fortune of Constantine, our God, protected ruler, and of the Blues is victorious. So Constantine III had the strong support of the Blue faction, which was the one that was instrumental in this riot writing. The general Domitianus, who had joined Valentinus and acted with him, was the leader of the Blues in Alexandria and was expelled by the Patriarch Cyrus soon after the later arrived in the city. Says the rebellion was started by the Blues in the Senate, who was probably members of that faction. So there was a lot of members of the Senate, the wealthy, like we were saying, this other general who really held good sway with the soldiers in the capital to go ahead and get this rebellion moved in the right direction and the overthrow of Martina and Hercules II. Now going to what really happened to Martina and Hercules II. Theophanes writes, as well as that the other Eastern Roman chroniclers, that when Hercules and Martina were seized, it was the Senate who had ordered that Martina's tongue be slit and Hercules II's nose be slit. So this would bar him from ever rising up and becoming an emperor in the future because of the mutilation. So that was a way of deposing him for good. Later on, tactics were used, we would see eyes being gouged out, blinding in some way, as well as still using the nose being cut. Sebastos, an Armenian historian, say that Valentina seized Martina, slit her tongue, and then murdered her children. Hercules II was killed by the advisors of the young Constantine, who afterwards raised him to the throne. Contemporary historians agree that the decision of the Senate, Martina's lost her tongue, and the nose of Hercules II was indeed slit. But oddly enough, they insist that Martina was deposed. But deposed by what? Where'd she go? So going on to Constantine, John of Nicaea maintains that the wife of Constantine was actually the daughter of Valentinus. He had married her after a further mutiny on the part of the later the void bloodshed. Strategos mentions no other sources for this. Strategos also talks about how Constantine, within a period of 20 years, the rebellions of Valentinus had occurred as well as the defections of the Armenians, the revolt of his uncle Gregory, exarch of Africa, and the mutiny of Olympius, the exarch of Italy, plus revolts in Africa and Italy, the conspiracy of the army of Thrace, and its rebellions under his brother Theodosius. He met all this head on with remarkable composure and fortitude. Yeah, it's true. So Constantine III really did have a lot going against him and was able to still retain his power and deal with each and one of these in a timely manner. Okay, so this goes with Valentinus now. So Stratos really sums up everything. He is quoted as that the empire being ruled by a young heirs and primarily Martina was abhorred by the aristocracy, the clergy, and the majority of the populace. Valentine was in command of a large army corps. There is no doubt that he was aware of the conspiracies that was affecting Constantinople, and his purpose was to dethrone Hercules II and exile Martina. It is, in my opinion, that Valentinus would certainly have exploited the opportunity that he had to play an active part in the conspiracy as generalissimo of the armies of the East. He had, up to the moment, no notable successors, nor would help the Eastern Roman forces in Egypt. And I'd rather doubt he even made any serious attempts to do so. He was just more concerned about putting Constantine's son on the throne. So it leads us to what happened now with Valentinus. So Stratos and Sabosos both talk about what happened shortly after with the rioting in Constantinople. Valentinus was trying to squash the rebellions, and the populace gathered at the Church of St. Sophia and beseeched the Patriarch to intercede with Valentinus to lighten the opposing measures. The General Antonius arrived at the scene and arrested the ringleaders of the protesting crowd and had them publicly scourged. To make matters worse, so the scourging caused more of a frenzy with the mob, and they decided to fight back, and they seized the General Antonius and burned him alive at the stake in the center of the city. Next is directed to the palace where it was seized, and Valentinus was seen being dragged out and decapitated by this same angry mob. In his place as the head of the raid, Theodore, the one loyal Armenian princes, was chosen to take his place. So Theodore was taken to take over Valentinus' place. So there's another part mentioned by Sibos that what happened is this General Antonius scourges the ringleaders and then actually punched the Patriarch in the face. The mob grabbed Antonius and dragged him by his feet into the middle of the city and burned him with fire on a stake. So burn him alive on a stake. He wrote that Valentinus was trembling with fear, was grabbed by the mob from his house, and they cut off his head, taking him to the spot where they burned Antonius. They burned the rest of his body also in the same place, so they burned this headless body at the stake. Sabos mentions Antonius had around 1,000 men during this rebellion and was unable to still squash this mob. So this was more than obviously 1,000 rioters to be able to not, for these soldiers not to be able to do anything, or maybe they just decided not to do anything. Which is interesting is this middle of the city where they dragged Antonius and Valentinus' headless body to be burned was actually a forum square of Voos, Voos, where they burnt to death them. There was like a bronze bull there, like as a statue, the square. This was where they also used to, during this time, during the 7th century, burn criminals alive and other Christians. Supposedly that was the spot where these two were burned. Which is kind of interesting. So this sums up the story of the rise and fall of Valentinus. Thank you for listening.